Welcome to the Library Connection. I'm Tracy Thomas, the director at the B.B. Comer Library, and each week, we love to bring you special guests, people in our community who are doing great things. We love to talk about events that are close to our heart at the library, and so we just appreciate TV 47 so much for always giving us this platform. We've been able to do this Library Connection TV show for many years now, and it's just one of the highlights of our week to get to come be with you. So we appreciate the TV station and them giving us this opportunity. Today we have a special guest with us. We have Mr. Mark Ledbetter, and Mark is a local guy. He probably needs no introduction around here. Lots of people know you.
Yes, been around for a while.
You've been around for a while. And Mark has written a book. Mark is a local author, and Mark has got some great information in his book that we've passed this book around at the library, and we've read it, and I think all of us that have read it said, hey, I can relate to something in that book.
Unfortunately, it's true.
It is.
It is true. That's one of the reasons I wrote it, is because this is a growing problem, and people need to be prepared for what is you're probably coming down the road for a lot of people.
I think his topic, his book is called Driving Mr. Charlie. It's a trip down memory lane with a man facing dementia. And this is your story, your retelling of your time with your dad.
Yes,
in the years that he developed the dementia and Alzheimer's. Right. And so we were just talking a few minutes ago, and there was a statistic you had that said 5.5 million American people have some type of dementia, Alzheimer's, or cognitive issue.
That's true, and I think it's probably larger than that, but I'm not a scientist. I'm just going by everything I've read, that this is growing, and it's an issue that is going to affect everyone in some point in time, one way or another. I compare it to the HIV virus. At one time it was very hush-hush a little bit, but now everyone is touched one way or another, a family member or a friend. It's also this way with dementia, because it has so many different forms. You have the predominant Alzheimer's, and my father had what is called Lewy body dementia. It's Alzheimer's, parallels Alzheimer's and Parkinson's symptoms, and you can have it induced by traumatic brain injury. There's a host of reasons why people develop this, and it's no respect of persons. While most of the gray in America are more susceptible, but I have a friend whose wife just recently turned 50, and she had early onset of dementia, and this has been a difficult story to follow, because I see him 2-3 times a week, and I'm trying to catch up with him how his wife is doing, and so it's just something that people need to know about, because the people who are going to make the decisions are not going to be their parents. It's going to be the children, and the children are going to be like I was, in their 50s. And if we're not aware that these things are going to happen, then we're going to find it. It's going to catch us by surprise. We're going to have different variety of emotions. We're going to be sad, we're going to be angry, we're going to just all these emotions, because we're not prepared. And that's part of my life mission, I guess, because preparation as a pastor, getting people prepared for the final days and the resurrection and the coming of the Lord, getting people prepared for things like this, trying to get people prepared as a disaster relief chaplain, getting ready, although chances are very slim that something will happen, we still need to prepare to respond if something happens, even if it's down the road, to help somebody else. And that's my desire, is to be able to help someone.
Well, you are in a perfect position to help people. So let's talk about what you do on a daily basis and how you come in contact with lots of people that this relates to.
I am a hospice chaplain for Southern Care New Beacon Hospice here in Sylacauga, and as a chaplain, also I'm a bereavement coordinator, so I see before and after. I have several patients who actually have Alzheimer's or dementia in other forms. Then I have people who have this long-term illnesses that they've been diagnosed within the next 6 months. If it progresses like it should, they will expire, they will pass. And so I deal basically with death daily. That's the only way I know how to put it, because that's the way it is. and you're there to comfort, to help, to strengthen those individuals who are giving care. But to me, dementia is probably the most cruel disease. Not so much for the victim, you might misunderstand, but for the caregivers. They're watching their loved one slowly but surely slip away. The person they remember them as being, they are just becoming less and less like that individual. And so there's no way for me to describe how you react to that, especially if you don't know what's going on. I know with my dad getting that diagnosis, it helped a whole lot. But as hospice chaplain, you're dealing with individuals whose prognosis is 6 months or less. Fortunately, for many who go on hospice care, and I'm an advocate of hospice, because when individuals receive individual health care, they receive, if they like it, to have an aide to come in to help them with hygiene and other light chores. They have a social worker who is able to come in. It's regards which hospice. A social worker comes in and they're able to analyze their finances to help direct them. If they are a veteran, help them get on the VA's program. If they're facing long-term placement in a skilled facility, they're able to help facilitate what needs to be done there as well. And it's just then we have a volunteer coordinator who is able to come in. On occasions they'll able to get someone to help sit sometimes, to go in and spell someone. So there's a lot of options with hospice. And it's for the caregiver, the good thing about caregivers, on a periodic basis, depending on circumstances, Medicare and so forth, there's the respite option where the individual patient is able to go to a skilled nursing facility for maybe up to a week, while that other individual is able to just relax, go on a vacation, attend to personal needs, have their own personal surgeries, whatever, without knowing that their loved ones will be cared for, and not carrying that guilt trip. I need to give this attention 24/7. So hospice is a great thing that's developed. It's been around for a long time. It's just now people are realizing that this is an option. More and more doctors are coming on board. They're beginning to see the value of hospice when they, I don't fault them, because their position is to stop the disease and what it's doing, but many are beginning to see sometimes there's just not any options. My sister-in-law recently was doing very well. About 6 weeks ago, she just had a little problem breathing. She went to her semi-annual checkup. The doctor did some tests, put her in the hospital. She had aggressive form of leukemia. She went on hospice. In 3 weeks, she is gone. Hospice earlier probably wouldn't have helped her in that situation, but hospice did come in and help manage the symptoms. There's no curative process in palliative care. It's not curative. It is to help manage the system, and hospice gives the individual, if they desire, the dignity to die at home with loved ones, and not in a facility, not in isolated somewhere. And for some people, that's very important, that they have this option of want to be able to leave this world at home with dignity and manage my pain symptoms so that I can enjoy what I can enjoy under my circumstances.
Well, and for those of us that have ever had the need for hospice, especially, we just dealt with that with my grandfather with his dementia, and so those of us that have had to use hospice, especially in the cases where it's dementia, something that's very difficult to deal with, we do know the value of that, and so it's always nice to hear that reinforced. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about your story and let you tell us a little bit about Mr. Charlie.
Hi, it's Shawnee McNeil at South First Bank. This is a great time for you to buy or build a new home, or maybe refinance your present mortgage. Our rates are the lowest they've been in years, and that means saving you money. We've been helping our customers become homeowners in this area for nearly 70 years, and we can make our approvals right here in the office, and that means saving you time. We're located here in downtown Sylacauga. Come in and find South First, a better way to bank.
Member FDIC, an equal housing lender. Marble City Pharmacy in Sylacauga is your destination for the highest quality health care. Our knowledgeable pharmacists are always available for questions about your medications or advice on taking over-the-counter products and supplements. Our friendly staff can assist you in choosing from our full lines of compression hose and medical equipment. And don't forget our gift department. We have a great selection of unique gifts for every occasion. Stop by today and see us. Marble City Pharmacy, where your health comes first.
Coosa Valley Medical Center, one of the top 10 hospitals in Alabama, is also Sylacauga's largest employer. Services from the emergency room to surgery to cancer treatment to post-stroke care. You won't believe what's right in your backyard. It's Coosa Valley Medical Center in Sylacauga. So, if you're sick in Alabama, choose one of the top 10 hospitals in Alabama. That is Coosa Valley Medical Center.
Welcome back to the Library Connection. I'm Tracy Thomas, the director at the B.B. Comer Library, and today we're talking with Mark Ledbetter. And Mark is a chaplain and a pastor. He's a chaplain at a local hospice, and he's also written a book called Driving Mr. Charlie, and this is his story about his experience with his father. And we know we just talked a little bit about Alzheimer's and dementia and how hard that is on the family. It's hard on the person, of course. We don't overlook that at all, but it's hard on the family too, because the family has to experience it from beginning to end.
That's right. It's very difficult, and afterwards too.
And afterwards too.
My dad was a very gregarious, social, outgoing person. He was the type person who said, "How you doing?" He meant it. It was not just a pleasant greeting. And after a while, he'd know your life history and, and everything about you. He was that kind of individual. And so he was just outgoing and something that you really appreciated about him, because he met no strangers. We began to know some changes, however. Dad when he turned over the checkbook to my mom, I had to scratch my head. So why is he doing this? And Mom had to learn all this, because he always took care. They were traditional South Georgia, North Georgia traditional family, and he took care of everything. And he turned it over to her. I was wondering what was going on. I was still pastoring at that time. And then when we moved to Sylacauga, I more or less became caregivers for both of them. Mom had developed an autoimmune system problem with attacked the muscle mass in her left shoulder. She became almost homebound. Dad had some difficulties, so I became the chauffeur. I'd take him to appointments in Birmingham and things like that. Now, my sister, Sally Hepson, she did a great job. She lives here in Sylacauga. She took care of them until I moved back. We took care together. But when I moved back, I took a job as a substitute teacher. It gave me some flexibility in how to care. But I remember as that story, I remember the phrase. You have to read the book to know what I'm saying. Why I pause when I say that. But I remember coming in one day and seeing the front end of my dad's car just crushed. Not crushed, but it was like somebody had run under something, mashed it down. You couldn't pop the hood. It had scrapes on it. And so I went into the house and said, "Pop, what happened to your car?" He said, "What you talking about?" And so I took him out to the garage, showed him that, and I said, "What happened, Pop?" He said, "I don't know." And a flood of thoughts went through my mind, wondering, what did he hit? Who did he hit? Is everybody else okay? And so I began to notice those things. And then since Mom had her condition, Dad became the body, the fetcher. He would go, he'd bring her meals and so forth. She would work her crossword puzzles, her word puzzles, word search puzzles. And she was a crafty type person. She had a house full of knickknacks, but she would put arrangements together with pine cones and so forth. And she asked Dad to go to the back porch to get her some pine cones. And he was gone for several minutes. And when he came back, he didn't have it in his hand. He said, "What does a pine cone look like?" And so Mom described to Pop what a pine cone was. He went on the back porch, because she always had a stash of different things, rocks. He came back with 3 things in his hand. He says, "Is one of these a pine cone?" And neither one of them were. So all of a sudden, these things began to not make sense and cause great concern. So I ended up taking him to a neurologist. And at first he wanted to diagnose him with Parkinson's. And he did have the symptoms, some of the symptoms. He had fallen and other issues. But I said, that doesn't explain the memory losses. And so I did some research and consulted with the doctor again, and we decided it was Lewy body dementia. And in the process of time, the test that I say, they discovered he had 5 mini strokes right after his heart surgery. We didn't know that either. So after we went to neurologists, Dad was sitting in his recliner, Mom in her recliner, and I stood between them and said, well, I've got good and bad news. I said, the good news is we know why Pop's having his problems. And I said, the doctor said you've had some strokes. He also says that you have a form of dementia, and he also says you can't drive your car again. He looked at me dumbfounded, and I just told him he had strokes, he had dementia, but all he heard was he couldn't drive anymore. And you're talking about putting you on a difficult place to be, is look at your dad, say, you cannot drive anymore. That was his last line of defense. That was his independence. And it was gone. It was gone. And so taking that from him, that was hard. I let him keep the keys because he said it felt good in his pocket. But then I said, from this point on, Sally or I will drive you to Walmart's, to your doctor, to get a haircut, to do that. And he silently resigned to that. But then, tragically, I was in the process of looking for something for both my mom and dad, a living assistant, something that could facilitate both their needs, and Mother died. She had a blood clot, went to her heart, boom, she's gone. And so I became a caregiver 24/7 immediately because Dad could not stay by himself at all. And so that journey for the next several months was difficult because I didn't understand what was going on. And so, hey, once I understood, things got better.
Well, it's a journey for the caregiver and the patient. And we know a little bit of Mr. Charlie's story. And when we come back, you're going to share with us some things that the caregiver needs to know, things that make the life a little bit easier for the caregiver, especially when the end comes and there's decisions that have to be made. We hope you'll stay with us.
Not getting a good night's sleep? Come into King's Mattress Outlet in Sylacauga and let us help you get that good night's sleep you deserve. We carry the best quality mattresses at the best prices from Restonic, King Cole, and Park Place. Eurotop Queen mattresses start at $199. Check out our Restonic Cabot Eurotop mattress with 1,000 individually pocketed coils, marvelous middle for back support, and comfort gel memory foam. King's Mattress Outlet in Sylacauga. Best quality at the best prices.
Getting a good education is important. It sets a foundation for life. I began as a student, and now I lead students in making wise choices every day. One of those choices is eating healthy. Please join me and my families as we get the word out that students ages 18 and younger can have free after-school meals as well as free summer feeding through CHAMPS, Get Healthy Talladega County, and every meal matters. Remember, let's get out and work together and end childhood hunger.
Marble City Pharmacy in Sylacauga is your destination for the highest quality health care. Our knowledgeable pharmacists are always available for questions about your medications or advice on taking over-the-counter products and supplements. Our friendly staff can assist you in choosing from our full lines of compression hose and medical equipment. And don't forget our gift department. We have a great selection of unique gifts for every occasion. Stop by today and see us. Marble City Pharmacy, where your health comes first.
Welcome back to the Library Connection. Today we're talking with Mark Ledbetter, and Mark is an author, and he's written a book about his experience with his dad and what Alzheimer's and dementia does to not just the person but to the family as well.
Yes.
And one of the parts that I loved so much about your book is the fact that you do offer some suggestions in the back for the caregivers.
Yes.
Things that will make life easier when you get to the point that maybe this person is no longer able to speak for themselves. And so let's talk about that. What are some of the things that you found?
I have found that preparing way before any event takes place is vital. I would advocate to anyone that's younger than I to begin to look at it. And you say, well, I don't want to look at those things, but people buy life insurance for the future that they're not going to recover, ever have any benefit from. But there are things that we need to look at honestly and hard. Things like living wills, advanced directives, they call them, power of attorney, personal will and testament, even making funeral arrangements with a local funeral home. I don't advertise for any of them, but they all have policies, and one of the advantages is you get the insurance, you lock it in, and you don't have the escalation or inflationary products. But again, when I say I'm not a lawyer, I'm just an observer, and you need to have a will and testament in place. You need to get that done before the onset, if at all possible, while they're still able to make decisions, while they can still, when they get to a point where they cannot communicate their will, you're already past that threshold. I know that it was 2 weeks before the doctor said no more legal documentation that I received the power of attorney from my mom and dad. The day my mom died, in fact, was when I got that paper. You need to have what's called a living will, because if you have certain things that if you don't want CPR, you don't want recitation, you don't want anything, tubes, incubation, you don't want all those things, put it on a piece of paper, write it down, give it, and let your doctor know. If you're checking in the hospital, let them know. They're going to ask you if you have one. Have that in place. If it gets to a point where you can no longer manage your affairs, appoint someone to be your power of attorney so that they can help make the decisions. The living will is not enforced unless you become incapacitated. I mean, as long as you're able to make decisions, you're okay. Power of attorney, as long as you're able to make decisions, you're okay. But the moment you cannot make decisions, you need to have these things in place so that the executor can kick in and they can step up. You can have, if you don't want to turn all over as a power of attorney, you can have what they call a health power of attorney who can help make those decisions. Because if you don't, someone's going to make those decisions for you. They may make decisions. If you don't want to be on life support, and the hard thing about caregivers is, I don't know how to say this delicately, but many caregivers make decisions based on their personal emotions and attachments rather than what they believe is best and loving for that loved one.
Yes. And
that's a hard thing to say, but it's true. Now, I've asked one person, I said, if that was you, would you want CPR under these circumstances? Because CPR can be devastating to someone who's much older. I mean, I'll say the possibility of breaking the ribs, the sternum, and all that, puncturing the lung, the possibility that if they do survive, they're not going to be any better and could be worse off. I mean, those are hard things to think about, but that's also the truth. And we need to have these ideas in place. I would advocate if you're 50 years old and older, you're going to make the decisions for your parents. And if you help them, guide them now while they're able to make these decisions, that's to me is vital. It's important that you are aware of it and that you're ready and willing to make the decision, to step up. It's a hard thing to do. Hard thing. The stereotype is the man steps up, but I know women who step up and they do things that are difficult because this is my mom. She wouldn't want to be on life support. My dad would not want CPR. All those things. I asked patients, I said, some want to be full code. Okay, that's fine. That's fine. But at the same time, the chances of them recovering and being better is not. They're not going to cure them. They're just going to delay the inevitable, which is okay. But at the same time, if you come back and you're worse off, and you don't want to be that way. I don't. Let me put that. I don't want to be that way. I want to have things in place so that when it comes time, my kids can sit down and do like I did, go to the funeral home. And this is another thing you need to be aware of when you go to the funeral home. I'm not disrespecting them, telling the truth. They're going to ask you some questions you may not be prepared for. But if you go ahead and make the preparations, I jokingly tell people in this day and time, I'm going to record my own sermon for my funeral, and play it. If you hear this message, I'm gone on to glory. There's some things I want to tell you, but there's things you can do and put in place. You can secure the plot and how much you want to spend and all these. There's other options today. A lot of people, I say a significant number of people opting for cremation today, which is 10 years ago was almost unheard of. A lot of reasons for that. But you need to stop and think hard about that. And nobody wants to talk about that.
It's not a pleasant subject, and I will tell you, after some things we've dealt with in our family in the last couple of years, my husband and I just went down a few weeks ago to the lawyer's office and said, give us the works, give us a will, give us an advance directive, give us power of attorney, let us make these decisions ourselves. And
sure.
It felt really good to walk out of there and know that, hey, we have been proactive and we've taken care of some things.
Proactive.
That my husband won't have to make those decisions if something should happen to me. And
sure.
so it's really a gift that you give other people.
It is.
When you do that. It takes the burden off of them to feel like they've made those tough decisions
Absolutely.
for you. So it was a great thing for us to do that. And we've just got about a minute, and I want to quickly just ask you to give 1, 2, 3, a few things people can do if they know somebody that is a caregiver. How can you take a burden off of a caregiver?
This is where churches and community organizations can step up. You know someone who is caring for someone who's homebound, go to them, relieve them. Give them a chance to go to Walmart, get their hair done, whatever. There's respite if they're on hospice, that can help them. But you can go in and sit with them and talk with them and just give them some relief, give them distraction. Again, let them get out of the house, go shopping, do nothing. Just give them a chance to spell them. Mm-hmm. That's the best thing you can do for caregivers, is to be there for them and step up and help them.
Because it's a tough job for a caregiver, and we saw with my grandfather, my mom actually needed surgery, and she was the caregiver, and she couldn't have her surgery
Wow.
because she needed to wait till things were clear with him. And so caregivers have one of the toughest jobs, and they tend not to take care of themselves.
That's true.
They focus on the person that they're caring for. Mark, thank you so much for this great book and for the information that you've given, because the book wasn't just your story, it was also a way to help a caregiver or somebody going through it. And I'll tell you, when we read it, we all said, yeah, I remember that. I remember when he stopped wanting to take a bath or when those things started to happen. So yeah. Thank you. And thank you so much for being our guest today on the Library Connection.
Appreciate it very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much for joining us as well. Hope to see you at the library.